I recently played through Black Mesa, the fan remake of Half-Life 1 that started development fucking 15 years ago, and finally its 1.0 release happened this year. And something that always surprises me is how Half-Life games never fail to give me a special feeling deep in the pit of my chest. Now, I don't think it's nostalgia, at least not entirely. Half-Life isn't something I played a whole lot as a kid, maybe the opening sequences of Half-Life 2 once or twice, but the games were more my brother's thing at the time. It could be nostalgia for the engine, the way the models move, the environments look, or the UI and the sounds. I liked messing with Gary's mod or fighting bots in Counter-Strike a lot at the time. I've come to realize the game's presentation does a lot for me. It's very cinematic. And when I say a game is cinematic, you probably think lots of cutscenes or railroading different set pieces or some kind of weird big soup made out of QuickTime events and dialogue choices. Half-Life doesn't do any of that. Half-Life does it right as far as I'm concerned. Half-Life does it like this.
Power 20%. Medical systems engaged. Morphine administered. Power 50%.
Half-Life is a cinematic experience that doesn't sacrifice what makes games as a medium unique, and there are two primary factors in how it achieves this. The first is the heavy scripting the game has going on underneath the hood. It was the first for games of the era and a technical marvel for its time. The second is the player never loses control of their character Gordon outside of situations where Gordon wouldn't have control anyway, like he's been knocked out or captured or something. There is no disconnect between Gordon and the player. Everything in the game happens to you, and you are directly involved in all of it. I feel more in the moment when playing Half-Life than any other game. The world the player is occupying is also interconnected and relatively seamless. There are pauses for loading zones, sure, but everything flows very naturally from location to location, and there aren't going to be any harsh jumps or teleports to new zones unless Gordon is literally teleporting to another place. The game's music is used sparingly and only pops up for bigger moments and set pieces. This, coupled with the scripting, gives action scenes a very engaging flow. They don't even last particularly long, just enough to give the player a taste and be on their way without overstaying their welcome. Consider the clip I showed earlier from the surface tension chapter. I hopped a fence, some intense music kicked in as soldiers sprung an ambush, there was a brief fight, I ran across a bridge that a helicopter blows up, was in some monster-infested waters, opened up a sewer pipe, then swam out and it was over. It took maybe a minute. In any other game, the fight with the soldiers probably would have been longer, and the rest of it would have been a cutscene or a QuickTime event, or the helicopter would have been around longer for some canned running at the camera nonsense. And because Half-Life is still a video game where ultimately the player is in control of the action, it doesn't have to play out like this. You don't have to fight the soldiers, and you don't have to trigger the chopper to blow up the bridge. You can hop the fence and go straight to the water and climb the tower to open the pipe. The helicopter only shows up if the bridge is approached, but this is assuming you've played the game and know what you're supposed to do to progress. In another game, this wouldn't be able to be skipped over or manipulated like this. Valve acts as a sort of silent director, subtly guiding the player's hand and leading them through the game in a way that shows off cool moments like this. And because the player is always in control, they feel more involved with those moments. Other cinematic games would be more overt with what they want the player to see and how they want them to see it. Games try to be cinematic, or they try to be like movies, but to do so, they have to make compromises and ultimately sacrifice the interactive element that makes games a unique medium. Sure, the beginning of Half-Life is slow and it takes a while, but starting from when the player gets their hands on the crowbar, it just goes. There's a regular stream of new things, whether it be weapons, enemies, environments, or the basics of just how to progress will change, and the player is always asked to do something different. Valve had this stuff figured out already back in 1998 with the way they chose to orchestrate and marry the narrative and gameplay. They didn't sacrifice Half-Life as a video game for the sake of making Half-Life cinematic. Playing a Half-Life game is a totally unique experience that provides a totally unique feeling I can't find in any other game. It's immersive, it's fun, it's satisfying, it's just fucking cool.